डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी।
Namaskar. Welcome all of you from the Chaitanya studio of the Jyotirmay campus of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar Open University, Ahmedabad. Today, we are going to discuss about paper 2 of the MJMC course, which is Understanding Media, Mass Communication and Journalism. Today, we will be discussing unit 2 of this chapter, and this is the fifth part of the lecture. Now, first of all, let us discuss what we have discussed earlier. So, in last lecture, we had seen that journalism was brought to India by Anglo-Indians. By this, we mean that the Britishers and then elite class or educated class Indians started journalism in India, and that is why this era is called Anglo-Indian era of journalism. Then newspapers by Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, etc., their names and their contribution in the freedom fighting or freedom struggle of India. Then first Indian language newspaper starts, that is Mumbai Samachar. Mind it, that is first daily newspaper, daily Indian language newspaper, that was Mumbai Samachar, which was in Gujarati language, started from Mumbai. Then Samachar Darpan was started. We have also discussed about the contribution of Bengal and Gujarat and Maharashtra in the beginning part of journalism. Then Censorship Act 1799 and Vernacular Press Act 1878. We have discussed about these acts as well. How did they impact the journalism or trend of journalism in India? So, today we are going to discuss section 3, that is how Spectator and Tatler are seen as pioneers of modern journalism. Question may arise, what is Spectator and what is Tatler? Let us see. For the beginning, I must tell you that these were the names of newspapers or journals which were started in the early beginning of journalism, and they were pioneer in many ways. They started and set some standards which are followed till date in journalism. That is why these two newspapers are very important. So, let us say what these two newspapers have done, and we will discuss in brief about these newspapers and their contributions. In the initial days of journalism, gossip and debate were reported as news in Europe and other countries. We all know that printing was started in Europe, in Germany, right. Then because of the printing, because of all this, journalism started in Europe first and then spread across the world. So, in the beginning of journalism, gossip and debate, these were the prime subjects on which the journalism or then newspapers used to report. Yet, these single page newspapers had a very wide readership and extremely sturdy circulation figures in those days. Now, you must see that they were just reporting about gossips, nothing new, no news, nothing value addition, just gossips. Then also they had very good circulation figures and wide readership. From this, we must know that people at large mostly have a curious mind, and they always tend to behave in a manner wherein they would want to know what is happening in others' life, right? So, journalism did that only in a different way. Newspapers were more read in coffee shops rather than being purchased for perusal at home or offices. Now, see, that was the time where money was scarce. People did not have money to spend on newspapers. Today, we have luxury to buy newspapers and they are very cheap, where they are very affordable at a very affordable cost. That is because the advertisements in those newspapers, right. So, but in those times newspapers were costly because the printing technology was costly and most of the work was done by hand. So, printing was costly, that is why newspapers were costly and people could not afford the newspapers. So, what did they do? They would read newspapers at coffee shops. So, coffee shops became popular for news reading point of view. During those days, reporters were hired to report about the debate and literary arguments taking place at the coffee houses. Now, do you know India also has this tradition, Indian coffee house. You must be having one Indian coffee house in your town or your city. Let me know in the comment box from which town or city you are watching, and do you have Indian coffee house in your city? So, coffee houses, they were the epicenter of the cultural events or happenings of a city or a town, right. So, in those days what used to happen, that arguments or debates used to take place in coffee houses. So, what these newspapers used to do, they used to send news reporters to these coffee houses. They would just simply sit there and report about the debates or gossips happening in and around the city. That is how the reporting of gossips started. Along with that, even gossips discussed was reported and widely read, and these used to become the talk of the town. Today also, you must remember that what the newspapers do mostly, they create sensation, they create such news that becomes talk of the town, or they report such events which are already talk of the town. So, what these newspapers or reporters used to do, they used to go to coffee shops, report the things, and ultimately these things were circulated among people at large. So, this is the journal that is called Tatler. What we have written here, Tatler has written an illustrated journal of society and the drama, right. Society and the drama, drama which is happening in and around the society, right. With this reference, let us take a look into the era and times of the Tatler and the Spectator. These were the names of the journals, and the Guardian, right. These three journals have a major impact in the growth of journalism and later part, right. These publications are considered to be a guide or university for a modern day journalism. They worked so well that they are considered as universities of modern day journalism. Two friends, Joseph Edison and Richard Still. These two friends founded the Tatler in 1709, right. These two names one must remember, Joseph Edison and Richard Still. They started the Tatler in 1709, and one more writer and author, Jonathan Swift, also joined them as a contributor. All of them were reporting under the ghost name, that is Isaac Bickerstaff, right. We all know many reporters and writers today also write in a ghost name, because they do not want to disclose their identity, right. So, in 1709 as well, they started a newspaper or a journal and they contributed it with a ghost name. Just like reporters are assigned beats in the present era, beats. Now, what is beat? Beat is a section. Let us take an example that if I am running or you are running a newspaper and you have 5 different reporters with you, what would you do? Would you send each and every reporter to different places and just keep on calling them, go this place, go to this place, go to this place? No, you would assign them certain topics, right, or certain geographical area, right. So, that is called beat. What these beats could be? Let us have some examples. One beat could be education, wherein the reporter would just focus on education stories or education reporting. Then that could be court. If your city has high court, then court or high court is a beat. Then there could be medical, right. Medical is also a greater field, bigger beat, wherein a reporter would just look after the medical field, right. Then there could be lifestyle beat, wherein happenings around the city would be covered. Then art and culture, these all are different kind of beats. Civic, that is your corporation, your and that working of the corporation, these all are covered under different beats, that is called beat. So, Tetler started the beats in those days. The same held true for the Tetler too. Still used to assign reporters to cover coffee houses, as during those days coffee houses were the main centers of gossip and news, right. So, what Steele used to do? He used to assign reporters to different coffee houses. A city would have different coffee houses, number of coffee houses. Each would have a different journalist sitting at the coffee house at a time, and he or she would cover gossips and news happening in the coffee house. Each coffee house had its own unique culture and style. Now see, today we have cafes, different cafes which are of different levels, right. You can go to tapri and have a tea, you can go to a AC cafe and have coffee. So, these are different level of cafes, or you can have beverages at these places. So, in those days also there were different coffee houses. They all had unique culture and unique styles. Along with that, the niche group used to regular visit these places. Each and every cafe or coffee house had a niche, right. Some coffee house may have some people from literature background, some coffee house may have people from scientific background, right. So, these kind of people used to sit together at certain coffee houses, and reporters used to go to these coffee houses. So, news or gossip coming from such sources was also varied in nature, right. That again shows beats, right. Different coffee house, different niche, different people talking about different things, ultimately different kind of subjects for reporting. Still used to allocate different reporters with matching interest to cover each coffee house, right. So, if a reporter has a scientific interest, if a reporter has a literary interest, he or she would be sent to such group, so that he would understand more and he or she would write it well, right. Then, while the White Coffee House was known for manners and etiquette, there was one coffee house which was known for its manners and etiquettes as well. Will's Coffee House. These are some of the names of the coffee houses. Will's Coffee House was famous for literary notes, right. As so, then came Grecian Coffee House, that was assigned to a reporter with an antiquarian interests, right. St. James Coffee House was another coffee house in which major source of happening of news used to happen, right. These were different kind of coffee house and their names and their nature, wherein different people would gather and discuss about the different topics. But towering among all those was Button Coffee House. This was eminent literary laureates were amongst its regular visitors, right. So, many literary laureates used to visit Button Coffee House and it was a major source of information for those journals, right. The entry fee of the coffee house was a penny. Now, see, we discussed earlier, people could not afford to have one newspaper, but they would afford to spend a penny and sit in the coffee house. So, coffee house would charge a penny for the entry, and against which visitors used to get to read the newspapers, right, books, essays, prints and pamphlets free of cost. So, in a penny they would get to read newspaper, books, essays and pamphlets. So, this was a good business wherein people would come to coffee house, enjoy coffee and read all these materials. Now, let us take it forward. While on stand newspapers were sold at 2 pence. On stand newspapers were also sold in these coffee houses, right. So, there would be two sections, one is for reading there and one is for sales. Now, it is claimed that the tables of the Button Coffee House were replete with literary pamphlets and newspapers, right. Button Coffee House, we already saw that modern laureates would be sitting in the coffee house. So, their interest was mostly literary. So, these pamphlets were put in Button Coffee House. One sitting at the Button Coffee House guaranteed obtaining immense knowledge, right. As one was sitting in the company of an august gathering where debates used to take place on a variety of subjects. If you sit once for an hour, for an hour or two, you would get immense knowledge from the discussions of the laureates, right. And the reporters were doing the same. They would sit there for hours and hours. They would just write reports about the discussions happening in the coffee house. So, this coffee house earned a nickname called Penny University, right, because many of the information people would get from this coffee house and it would charge a penny for the entry fee. So, it was known as Penny University. Now, in those days newspapers used to cover debates and discussion taking place at these coffee house and share it with the country we already discussed. During the 17th and 18th century or during the early days of journalism, newspapers were printed on both sides of a single page and circulated. Like you take one piece of paper, one sheet of paper and print from one side and the other side. That is it. That was the newspaper in those days. One paper, double sides, right. This is, we are talking about 17th and 18th century. Still and Anderson closed down the Tetler 2 years later and launched new newspaper that is called Spectator, the Spectator. For certain reasons, they closed down the newspaper called Tetler and those two partners started new newspaper called the Spectator. This was much more successful than the Tetler. Interestingly, the Spectator was published in England and America together, right, and had 555 editions. Now, in modern day journalism, we all know newspapers have different editions, wherein Delhi would have an edition, Mumbai will have one edition. Let us take an example of the Times of India. If Times of India is published from Delhi, it is called Delhi edition. Published from Ahmedabad, Ahmedabad edition, right? Likewise, published from Chennai, Chennai edition. So, each and every city would have different editions of the Times of India, right, wherein local news will be changing, but the international and national news or sports news or business news will be the same, right. That is how newspapers became more and more localized and simultaneously global as well. It was widely read by the middle class, businessmen and the traders at both the countries. Now, look here, the Tatler was an elitist newspaper, right. People used to read them in the coffee houses only, where laureates would be there, the elite class would be there, but the Spectator made it to the middle class, businessmen and traders of the different countries, right. That is an achievement of Tatler. From the elitist, it went to the masses, people at large. So, we will keep it to this for this lecture, and in the next lecture we will see the journey of Spectator in detail. Till then, namaskar. स्वाध्यायः परमः